este webinar ustedes van a ver dos ejemplos de dos organizaciones que hemos estado apoyando ya hace más o menos unos 7, 8 meses y que han recibido asistencia técnica del Fondo reVive. Si hay interés en conocer más sobre el Fondo reVive o si usted cree que su organización puede beneficiarse de este tipo de asistencia técnica, aquí están nuestros datos de contacto. Igual los voy a publicar también al final para que se sientan tranquilos de contactarnos. Estamos felices de poder apoyar al ecosistema. Bueno, y habiendo dicho esto, pues ya vamos a pasar a la segunda presentación del día. Acá pues los quiero presentar con Paul Priu. Paul Priu es socio de una empresa que se llama Bioflux. Bioflux básicamente permite a las empresas agrícolas, instituciones de desarrollo y promotores de proyectos más grandes del mundo reducir las emisiones de la cadena de suministro e impulsar todo el tema de resiliencia con estrategias de biocarbón probadas, medibles y de alto impacto. Entonces, quiero invitar a Paul a que por favor ya comparta su pantalla con su presentación y dejarlos con Paul. Bienvenido, Paul.
Thank you very much, Pilar. I hope you can all see my screen. Hi, everyone. So as Pilar introduced, my name is Paul Priu. I'm the co-founder of Bioflux. And today I'll take some minutes to briefly introduce the topic of carbon credits to you. I'll do this very quickly due to our limited time, but I'll introduce to you what are carbon credits, what's their role within the fight against climate change. I'll introduce you to a variety of different carbon removal technologies that we have. I'll contextualize carbon credits and carbon removal credits within the context of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. And then I'll also talk to you a little bit about corporate demand for credits and how corporates are using carbon credits within their net zero strategy. So what are carbon credits and why do they matter? So as you've all heard by now, I assume we considerably need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to achieve our climate targets. However, within this reduction, there will always be residual emissions that will persist. On top of that, we also have historic amounts of greenhouse gases that will remain in the atmosphere. So one of the ways that we have to remove these unavoidable emissions, such as methane and nitrous oxide in agriculture, is to implement removals to put the net in net zero. So carbon credits effectively allow us to work as tradable certificates to represent the reduction, avoidance, or removal of 1 metric ton of CO2 that we have durably reduced or avoided or removed from the atmosphere. These enable companies, countries, or individuals to either inset or offset unavoidable emissions towards their supporting their progress towards their climate targets. Essentially, these really serve as financial instruments that help companies, countries, and individuals support projects that are using innovation to achieve climate impact and action. Now, you might have heard this before, but how much carbon removal do we need to achieve our Paris Agreement targets? It is estimated that by 2050, we need to remove 10 gigatons of CO2 annually to achieve these targets. As I mentioned, removals put the net in net zero. So removals are really not optional, they're essential, and they must be rapidly scaled up through nature-based and engineered carbon removal solutions to achieve these targets. Now, luckily, we do have a variety of solutions to be removing carbon durably from the atmosphere, carbon dioxide. Now, there's a variety of solutions. You might have heard of some. You might be hearing for the first time about others today. I've presented 4 here that are most likely more aligned with your value chains, your agricultural value chains. So afforestation, soil carbon sequestration, which you might be more familiar with. And then, as you'll hear about today, biochar and enhanced rock weathering. Now, not all credits have a similar pricing. Some are worth $10 to $80 per ton. Some are worth up to $370 per ton. Now, the cost is related to the integrity of the methods that we're using and the permanence at which we're removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. I won't have time to go through this entire table, but essentially we have a variety of criteria to determine how permanent it is that we're achieving this impact. In the case of afforestation and soil carbon sequestration, we can estimate that within 100 years, there's a risk that this carbon dioxide will be re-released back into the atmosphere. In the context of biochar, recent studies are proving that it can be persistent in soils for 1,000+ years. And in the case of enhanced rock weathering, 10,000+ years. So already the fact that it's more durable and more permanent increases the cost of these credits. Now you also, of course, as with any project that you want to do, you want to be monitoring, reporting, and verifying the quality of the impact that you're achieving. Now there's different methods that we can do this. There's models, there's sampling, there's direct tools, there's multi-parameter tools. And essentially what we see is that with the more traditional afforestation and soil carbon sequestration tools, the quality of this monitoring, reporting, and verification is a little bit more poor or moderate than what we see with these hybrid or engineered carbon removals, such as biochar, which has a very strong DMRV, and enhanced rock weathering, which is increasingly strengthening its DMRV. The great thing also with durable carbon removals, or carbon removals in general, is that we're not only removing CO2 from the atmosphere, we're also achieving a lot of co-benefits on the biodiversity, on soils, and also on local employment. So all of these have a variety of different impacts. Now, one of the main takeaways to take from this discussion is that when you're selecting how to support a carbon dioxide removal methodology, there's a variety of risks and trade-offs that you have to balance. Such as, for example, in the more affordable afforestation and soil carbon sequestration, you might have a risk of reversal of the impact that you've achieved. With biochar, there's also concerns about your facility, maybe also about your biomass supply. And enhanced rock weathering, you might have risks related to energy costs or logistical challenges and potential environmental impacts. Now, we're also supporting innovation with the cost of these credits. Some solutions are more mature, such as afforestation, soil carbon sequestration. Biochar is rapidly scaling, so you're still supporting this innovation. And of course, enhanced rock weathering, it's early stage, so you're really supporting a lot of these pilot projects that are achieving this amazing impact. So the main takeaways is that there's no single method that is perfect. Each has a mix of trade-offs. There's engineered and hybrid methods such as biochar and enhanced rock weathering that are increasingly setting the standard for how do we quantify and verify our impact, defining what is a high integrity credits. And really, we're seeing that more corporates are investing and purchasing credits due to the permanence and the robust MRV that we see in these nascent technologies. So within the context of the Paris Agreement, going back to the discussion of net zero, we see that the Article 6 of Paris Agreement is a vital instrument to allow us to finance and trade carbon credits between companies, countries, and even individuals. Article 6.4, which was put into place at the most recent COP conference in Baku, is a mechanism that enhances the quality, transparency, and reduces the risk of double counting of different credits. Now, why does Article 6 and why does Article 6.4 matter? As I mentioned before, these are really creating financial instruments for companies, countries, and individuals to trade credits to meet their sustainability targets, either on a voluntary or on a compliance market. As we saw with 6.4, there's an increasing demand for higher quality and integrity credits, and there's a higher willingness to pay for these credits. And of course, by adhering to Article 6 and having these international standards, companies can meet international standards, reduce their risk, and enhance the credibility of their climate action. And we do see that, again, we see high integrity credits becoming the benchmark for credible climate claims across the board. Now, for corporates, how are corporates looking into carbon dioxide removal? Corporates are increasingly embedding durable removals within their net zero strategies, either to address these residual or these remaining hard to abate emissions, often in agriculture, for example, from scope 3 emissions, which can, in the case of integrating them within their supply chain, can have supply chain decarbonization benefits. But companies that have SBTi-aligned targets, they can also use those to achieve those targets. And as we'll introduce in a second, there's also the concept of insetting, which companies can use to achieve their net zero targets, enhance their credibility, their brand credibility, but also really future-proof their supply chain and their value chains. Now, as I mentioned, there's different ways that companies are looking into this. There's two main ways, either through offsetting. So companies that don't have an agricultural value chain, for example, are really increasingly looking to offset their credits, their emissions, sorry. So they're buying credits from companies that are removing CO2 beyond the value chain of that direct company. These are tech companies, finance companies, and consumer brands. However, companies such as agri-food and consumer good companies, such as reVive or Ecom or Nespresso, are using insetting by integrating enhanced rock weathering and biochar within their supply chains to future-proof them and to really also achieve their net zero targets. As I mentioned, there's a different level of maturity for all of these solutions. We do see that afforestation and reforestation has significantly delivered much more credits than other methods. 68 million tons of CO2 is estimated to have been delivered and removed durably or semi-durably using afforestation and reforestation. However, as I introduced, there's a shifting demand because of the scrutiny for the quality of these credits. We see that soil carbon sequestration is gaining traction. However, it's only removed around 1 million tons of CO2, but the MRV is improving, so maybe we'll see some gaining traction again. Biochar, while still nascent, has already delivered quite a lot of impact. Approximately 1 million tons of CO2 has already been delivered. There's a rapid growth and there's a high demand for these credits. Now we have enhanced rock weathering, which still has not yet delivered as much impact as other methods, but it's really early stage and it's rapidly increasing. MRV is increasing, and we really expect them to be scaling rapidly. Approximately 1 million tons of CO2 is expected to be committed by 2027. That's all from my side. Again, Bioflux is a consultancy firm focused on integrating carbon removals within your value chain. If you're looking into these topics, we just released a white paper, which you can access here. If you want to contact us, you're free to do so. Thank you, IDH, for giving us this opportunity, and looking forward to hearing the other speakers now.
Muchas gracias, Paul. Muy interesante la introducción que nos acabas de compartir a todos y nos da luces sobre lo que vamos a continuar escuchando en este webinar. Muchas gracias. Le doy la palabra entonces a Luis Felipe Arias, quien es el CEO de Biodiversal y quien nos va a presentar un poco más en detalle sobre su iniciativa del programa de biochar en café. Entonces, sin mucho más preámbulo, le doy la palabra y él nos contará pues todo lo que está pasando con Biodiversal y lo que están haciendo en la cadena de valor de café. Adelante, Luis Felipe.
Buenos días a todos. Gracias, Ania, por la introducción, al IDH por la invitación tan generosa. Y hoy tengo el gusto de poderles hacer una introducción formal a nuestro programa Coffee Biochar, alineado con lo que Paul nos comentaba anteriormente de las oportunidades de el secuestro de carbono, el mercado voluntario y el biochar como una solución basada en la naturaleza. Actualmente, a través de Circular Origin, en alianza con Biodiversal, tenemos una ronda de inversión vía SAFE de $2.5 millones a la que haré profundización, pero sin antes comentarles que estas dos compañías estamos hoy liderando la próxima generación de remociones de carbono regenerativas en la cadena de café a través de la transformación de los residuos agrícolas que combina impacto climático, mejoras de suelo, desarrollo rural y sobre todo impacto a las familias cafeteras. Entonces, algunos, digamos, puntos a resaltar de, digamos, esta oportunidad de inversión que estaré presentando. La ronda SAFE estará específicamente orientada a escalar un modelo de negocio probado con sus unidades económicas que vienen desarrollándose desde el año pasado. con indicadores financieros aproximados superiores a un 35% de EBITDA con periodos de payback de 12 meses en proyectos modulares, escalables y operativos, digamos, desde el año pasado. Y ese SAFE está orientado a desbloquear en un periodo de 12 meses 14 millones de ingresos derivados de la comercialización de créditos de carbono de biochar y se robustece a través de un ecosistema complejo de replicar con más de 10 años de experiencia en la cadena de valor de cafés, que permite alianzas estratégicas de la compañía con el sector bastante robustas para generar oportunidades a 550.000 familias cafeteras que hay en Colombia. Un poco de contexto sobre el mercado voluntario de carbono y sobre todo específicamente de estos créditos de remoción que mencionaba Paul en su presentación de biochar. Es un mercado de crecimiento exponencial, sobre todo por cada vez más compañías sumándose a objetivos de SBTI y sobre todo grandes corporativos de tecnología están suscribiendo acuerdos de largo plazo cada vez más importantes para bloquear y garantizar el suministro en los próximos años de acuerdo a sus políticas de neutralidad en carbono. Eso evidentemente hace unas presiones importantes en precio, restringe digamos, la oferta de créditos de carbono de este tipo y pues existe a día de hoy un gap o un espacio entre demanda y oferta bastante amplio que este tipo de proyectos están llamados a solucionar como estrategias de descarbonización de las principales cadenas de valor. Y el biochar, pues además de esa capacidad de ser una solución basada en naturaleza que secuestra carbono, tiene la potencialidad de integrarlo a las cadenas agrícolas como un insumo específicamente orientado a transicionar a una regeneración y a una agricultura sostenible. El biochar como insumo agrícola no solo secuestra carbono, sino es capaz de recuperar suelos altamente degradados, aumentar la capacidad de retención de agua, volver más resilientes ciertos cultivos y específicamente con el foco en café, pues es extraordinario ver cómo pues, estas 550.000 familias que hoy dependen de café, pues se encuentran en un grupo poblacional altamente afectado por temas de cambio climático, a lo cual biochar hoy se posiciona como una alternativa escalable y sostenible. ¿Cómo lo hemos desarrollado? Un proceso de producción artesanal de biochar pensado para la agricultura tropical y de pequeña escala, como lo es la caficultura, que promueve la inclusión y una serie de co-beneficios sociales y de impacto con cientos y cientos de familias cafeteras a través de un proceso estandarizado, pero sobre todo con alta tecnología de trazabilidad de punto a punto para permitir confianza y seguridad del mercado voluntario de carbono con una serie de partners impresionantes, entre ellos, por supuesto, el IDH con su programa reVive, que nos ha apoyado en este proceso de asistencia técnica y eso nos ha permitido seguir desarrollando y robusteciendo el proyecto, pero aliados en temas de monitoreo, trazabilidad, tecnología, metodología, integridad y por supuesto terceros verificadores que robustecen este modelo para el mercado voluntario de carbono y sobre todo para acceder a precios premium de los créditos de remoción. Eh, entonces, acceder a esos premium de créditos de carbono de remoción nos permite tener unas unidades económicas muy beneficiosas. Nosotros manejamos unidades económicas modulares a las que les denominamos clúster, conformados entre 80 y 100 familias cafeteras en un área específicamente delimitada y cada clúster está en capacidad de secuestrar 1.370 toneladas de CO2 equivalente que se transforman en créditos de carbono. Eso genera utilidades operativas o EBITDAs superiores a un 35% que distribuimos de una forma muy transparente con las familias cafeteras aliadas del programa. Más de $30.000 se realizan en pagos directos a las familias vinculadas del programa y eso genera ingresos adicionales para estas familias que incrementan en un 10% el promedio de ingreso anual promedio que tiene un caficultor de pequeña escala en Colombia en 15 días de operación que están en el proyecto. Este, digamos, es extraordinario, es un motor de crecimiento para que las familias hagan una transición hacia una agricultura más sostenible, recuperen sus suelos, mientras en el corto plazo tienen beneficios económicos que incentivan a sumarse a estas iniciativas. El SAFE tiene una utilización específica en el crecimiento y la financiación de nuevos clústeres para expandirnos a nuevos territorios y a nuevos grupos de familias cafeteras que hoy en día están en capacidad de sumarse al proyecto. Y eso va a desbloquear un crecimiento importante a través no solo de la participación de equity, sino la capacidad de nosotros a través de deuda de obtener más capital para aumentar el número de clústeres en los próximos meses para alcanzar ese objetivo. Y hoy en día Circular se posiciona en términos comparativos y competitivos como una oportunidad temprana para invertir en una solución climática validada, con menor capital requerido y mucho más eficiente que otro tipo de compañías, digamos, de producción industrial. Y por supuesto con una alta atracción, un modelo escalable en un mercado pues que está valorizando muy alto a sus pioneros como lo ha sido Baraja, Carbon Culture o Net Zero, que alcanzaron valorizaciones mucho más altas con incluso capacidades de secuestrar carbono mucho menores a las que hoy en día Circular Origin está generando con su proyección de escala. Y básicamente esta producción de escala a nivel de clústeres nos permite tener un pipeline muy rápido para expandirnos en diferentes territorios en Colombia, sobre todo los principales municipios cafeteros en los que ya tenemos, eh, digamos, alianzas, equipos y un entendimiento territorial de más de 10 años de entendimiento de la industria cafetera en el país. Y eso nos permite poder alcanzar más de 200.000 créditos de carbono en este plan de expansión, gracias con la ronda SAFE y el levantamiento de deuda en la que la compañía está trabajando. Y sobre todo, esto solo tiene sentido a través de una de las fortalezas más importantes de Circular y es la creación de una plataforma y de un ecosistema que integra visiones de una agricultura regenerativa 360. El papel de Circular Origin es permitir que esta transición sea desarrollada por todos los actores que pueden contribuir, desde entidades territoriales capaces de apoyar el relacionamiento comunitario como la Federación Nacional de Cafeteros, como también compañías o mecanismos de capital a través de, por ejemplo, el IDH, fondos de inversión, family office, etcétera, que tengan un mandamiento prioritario por temas de sostenibilidad, pero a través de proyectos escalables y rentables. Compañías de reporte, de monitoreo, como son los estándares, como lo es el IBI, el International Biochar Initiative, al que nosotros hacemos parte, para aumentar la robustez de los estándares y el trabajo colaborativo. Compañías de la cadena de valor de café, como lo pueden ser tostadores, compañías exportadoras que se están sumando a la iniciativa, como también compañías en el tema de insumos regenerativos, biotecnología, que robustezan, por supuesto, los beneficios del biochar. Y eso nos permite tener una hoja de ruta que hoy en día consta de 7 clústeres, aproximadamente entre 600 y 700 familias hacen parte hoy por hoy del programa Coffee Biochar en los departamentos de Huila y Tolima, los principales cafeteros del país, pero con una visión de escala de más de 550.000 familias cafeteras. 500 clústeres son un escenario posible para el 2028, pero sobre todo con un modelo replicable en países que tienen una, digamos, una caficultura similar de pequeña escala con los mismos retos en cambio climático, como lo puede ser México, Panamá, El Salvador o Costa Rica, países donde nosotros también hemos tenido operaciones a través de compañías de café del ecosistema al que hacemos parte. Y eso nos desbloquea pues un potencial importante de sumarnos en la estrategia de descarbonización más ambiciosa de la cadena de valor, que permite justamente el biochar y enfocarnos desde origen en las fincas de las familias cafeteras que nutren la cadena de valor de café. Ese, digamos, es la propuesta de valor que desarrollamos y que el IDH nos ha apoyado bastante a lo largo de todos estos meses de trabajo y los invitamos a, digamos que, contactarnos para tener toda la información derivada pues, de este SAFE que está abierto en este momento y todo el data room y el paquete de documentos está habilitado eh, para pues, poderla remitir a los inversionistas interesados. Con eso culmino. Muchísimas gracias a todos.
Muchísimas gracias, Luis Felipe. Sí, realmente un mercado nuevo que se está creando, una cadena de valor que yo diría que es paralela a a cadenas de valor agrícolas, y que trae pues una cantidad de cobeneficios muy interesantes. Ahora quiero presentarlos con Ludwig Ritter. Ludwig, te invito a que por favor compartas tu pantalla. Ludwig es accionista de Tropicarbon y el CEO de Tropicarbon. Nosotros venimos trabajando con Ludwig desde el año pasado, dándole también asistencia técnica preinversión. Y esta es otra de las tecnologías que creemos puede tener un potencial interesante en la intersección con los mercados agrícolas y mercados de remoción de carbono. Entonces, adelante.
Hello, can you hear me, everybody? Sorry. Yes, perfect. Thank you, Pilar, and thank you for the great presentations before. My name is Ludwig Ritter. I'm CEO and co-founder of the company Tropicarbon. We remove CO2 with enhanced rock weathering, which was already introduced slightly by Paul before, while supporting farmers in Latin America. The basic issue that we're tackling is that today's world is facing difficulties. We have a 400% increase in natural disasters that we witnessed over the last 10 years. About 21% of the greenhouse gases that led to these disasters are caused by agriculture. And about 50% of soils in Latin America are unfortunately severely degraded, which means higher costs for farmers and lower yields. And this is why we dedicate all of our mission at Tropicarbon to empower Latin American farmers to improve yields, soils, while removing millions of tons of CO2 from our atmosphere. How do we do this? We do this with a methodology called enhanced rock weathering. Enhanced rock weathering recycles unused silicate rock powder from the mining industry. We then crush this rock and apply it on farmlands, which replaces traditional fertilizer for farmers. Rain every day transports gigatons of CO2 from the atmosphere onto our soils, and the rock powder that we spread on these soils separate the carbon from the rainwater. This carbon is then securely stored in soils as form of bicarbonate minerals. And farmers save on fertilizer costs and grow yields because our rock powder is very high in magnesium, calcium, and kalium, and regenerate soils to be more resilient to climate change. The bicarbonate that was separated and stored from the rainwater with our rocks finally travels through groundwaters, rivers, and is finally washed into oceans where it is stored permanently for thousands of years. Of course, this is a beautiful theory, but as mentioned before, our methodology is still early on, and that's why it's of highest importance for us to actually show measurable impact through field scale and also lab scale deployments, which we've been doing over many months now in Colombia. We've seen that for CO2 capture, enhanced rock weathering can store carbon about 3 times faster than projects based in the United States or in the global north. We remove 15 tons of CO2 per hectare per year, and this can be redone every year for every hectare. And our carbon removal is verified by trustable third parties, which we'll talk about in a second. We also have a very close eye on yield impacts of enhanced rock weathering in Colombia. We've seen that yield impacts can yield to more than 30% yield increases if our rock blend is applied on soils. This 30% is compared to no other amendments, but even if you compare it to traditional fertilizers, like for example, ag lime or other fertilizers, we still see a 15% increase. So it makes a very big difference for farmers in Colombia. The major impacts from an agronomical perspective is that we've seen a very strong increase in pH, in magnesium, calcium, and kalium. Our business model, you might wonder, is very, very simple. We buy the rock powder as an unused product from mines. We then transport it to the farms. We offer it to farmers as a cheaper alternative to their traditional fertilizers, helping them cut costs. And then when we measure how much carbon we remove, we sell the carbon credits on global carbon markets. In fact, the enhanced rock weathering space has been booming over the last years. Just last year, we saw an increase of 644% in sales of enhanced rock weathering credits, with very notable buyers like, for example, Microsoft, Meta, Google, Stripe. And we're looking to see this forecast of the sales growth accelerate even further down the road. Now, in order to sell carbon credits, it is of highest importance to reliably measure how much carbon is being removed. And this is where we invest most of our resources every day. We focus our quantification of how much carbon our projects remove on 2 different evaluation criteria. The first criteria is measuring soil water analysis. We developed a proprietary tool that lets us collect pore waters under the ground. This is about 30 centimeters under the ground, which we then test on total alkalinity. This is a direct correlation to how much carbon has been removed. So that means that every week for every project, we can actually pinpoint how much CO2 has been removed for that particular project. These measurements are expert validated by leading universities that we partner with both in the United States, but of course also in Colombia. The second perspective that we take on quantifying carbon removal is we're looking at soil analysis. We're taking comprehensive soil sampling from every project and then undertake elemental changes in the soil that confirm carbon sequestration. These measurements are also independently verified by laboratories for long-term monitoring. All of these measurements that we take for our projects are verified by independent ICROA endorsed registries. For us, we work with Isometric. There's also other registries in the market. We believe that Isometric is one of the most profoundest protocols with the highest liability. And this is why we focus all of our measurements on this very trustable third-party verifier. We operate exclusively in Colombia. And the reason for that is that we have incredible location-based competitive differentiators of doing enhanced rock weathering comparing to other countries. As mentioned before, enhanced rock weathering and particularly carbon capture can be about 3 times faster, mainly to the ideal soils in Colombia, the ideal climate, the high precipitation rates. Nowhere in the world is there as much rain as in Colombia. And finally, the right types of rocks, which means that we have very particular rocks in Colombia that we can use for this methodology that let us in the end store more carbon with fewer rocks. And lastly, because Colombia has a very dispersed landscape of different mines, we have very short transportation distances between the mine and the farm, which helps us keep our costs much lower than other providers in other places of the world. So far, our growth has been fueled by science, but we believe that we're powered by urgency. And this is why last year in April, we launched our first field scale pilot project deployments and designed our proprietary MRV technology with which we measure carbon sequestration. In August last year, we partnered with Google and Isometric for impact verification. We afterwards received the technical assistance grant by IDH reVive, which really helped us in developing the way we measure carbon sequestration, but it also helped us in launching Latin America's largest enhanced rock weathering data collection project, which we do together with several universities in Colombia. And this data collection project is not only highly beneficial to Tropicarbon and Tropicarbon's growth with new buyers, but it's also very helpful for the overall industry of enhanced rock weathering, which benefits highly from understanding the data that we sample in Colombia, which has been empowered and made possible by IDH. We raised funding from leading investors in the climate space earlier this year. We're doubling down and raising another round now, which I will talk about in a minute. But most of our focus right now is expanding our projects, gaining more data, and selling more of our projects to clients. Our economics that we see on our field every day unlock a major scale in the next coming years. And this is mainly amplified by three reasons. One, we have a very cost-effective rock blend that is uniquely available in Colombia. We have very short transportation distances, and our MRV technology, which is oftentimes a very high cost point for enhanced rock weathering companies, is very low and scalable. And this is why we see for the next years a yield increase from around 150 tons that we see this year to a yield increase of around 5,000 tons in 2027. And we see a carbon removal of 1,500 tons this year, going to 140,000 tons in 2027. So as you can see, we're going to be scaling up our impact very rapidly over the next years, mainly amplified by operating in Colombia. Our team is very mission driven. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have an agronomic background. I come from agriculture. I was raised on a farm. My co-founder Wilson is a seasoned geologist with over 25 years experience in Colombian mining industry. Professor Camilo Montes is Colombia's Geologist of the Year in 2018. And Juan Camilo Gomez is our science lead. He is Colombia's leading enhanced rock weathering geochemist and leading our science front. And I would like to invite you to join our path to a sustainable future. We have two propositions for investors, but also agricultural producers that are on this call. For investors, we invite you to participate in our seed round financing, which is also done via a safe note of $1.5 million. We have already $550,000 committed, and the round will be closing in September 2025. For agricultural producers, we invite you to trial our rock powder to generate better and healthier soils, produce higher yields, and also participate in carbon removal, which makes our planet a safer space. We're looking ideally for crops that include corn, sugarcane, palm oil, and coffee, but we're also open to other crops in Colombia. Thank you for listening and for giving the space for this presentation. Looking forward to hear your questions.
Muchísimas gracias a Ludwig por su presentación, a Luis Felipe, a Paul. Yo creo que con esto tenemos un panorama relativamente claro de estas nuevas tendencias en la intersección del mercado agrícola y el mercado de remoción de carbono. Quisiera invitar a las personas que tengan preguntas a que por favor levanten la mano y si quieren hacerlas, con muchísimo gusto estamos atentos a ver cómo podemos responder. Bueno.
Hola.
Vale, acabo de recibir una pregunta de manera privada. Entonces, esta pregunta busca entender cuáles son las tendencias o cómo se ve el desarrollo de estas tecnologías en los próximos 5 años. Entonces, brevemente le voy a dar la palabra a Luis Felipe y luego a Ludwig para que brevemente nos cuenten un poco sobre ese tema.
Gracias, por supuesto. Durante los próximos 5 años, las tecnologías, sobre todo en temas de monitoreo, reporte y trazabilidad, deben ir incrementando de forma considerable, aprovechando capacidades de conexión de Internet satelital y desarrollo de equipos de IoT que robustezcan operaciones de pequeña escala en temas de producción de biochar, pero sobre todo nuevas tecnologías en producción de biochar van a ser lanzadas muy pronto para volver eficiente los procesos de producción artesanal y que paulatinamente pues la brecha que hay entre producción industrial y artesanal vaya siendo pues mucho más eficiente para seguir robusteciendo producciones en pequeña escala con todos los beneficios o los co-beneficios sociales y de impacto que tienen este tipo de iniciativas.
Gracias, Ludwig.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think for enhanced rock weathering particularly, the growth of our space is highly dependent on two factors. One is the financial side. So how many buyers of enhanced rock weathering credits will actually evolve over the next years? We've seen, as I showed in the presentation, a very steep increase over the last years. But this increase needs to be going consistently forward in order to actually achieve the megaton scale that we're all looking for and that we need in order to remove the carbon that needs to be removed. And the major dependency on whether these sales forecasts will actually happen is the trust in our technology. And that in the end means how clearly and how reliably can companies like Tropicarbon and also other companies in our space measure how much is being sequestered and captured by our technology. Luckily, every month there is developments coming out from all over the world, including from Colombia by us, about developments on how we measure carbon sequestration. And the more developments happen, the more trust there is in the market and also the more purchasing liquidity there will be in the market. And then on the other hand, we see one of the major foundations for growth of enhanced rock weathering, agriculture. So farmers need to believe in this technology. Farmers need to understand what it does to their soils and to their yields, how it helps them save costs and increase productivity. And this is also majorly driven by data, in the end, by enhanced rock weathering data from all over the world, but particularly from the regions where we do enhanced rock weathering. And the more transparent companies like us or other companies in the world with enhanced rock weathering can be, the more trust there will be of farmers, and that also will mean more growth of enhanced rock weathering around the globe.
Muchas gracias, Ludwig. Quería preguntarle antes de dar la palabra a los demás si Paul tienes algo, te gustaría agregar algo a esta pregunta. Paul de Biofoods.
Sorry, I forgot to put on the translation, but I think you asked if I had anything to add. I don't particularly have anything to add. I think indeed it's. I think what Tropicarbon also mentioned during their presentation, focusing on MRV, as both companies are doing, is very important to continue quantifying our impact. So yeah, I don't particularly have anything to add.
Gracias, Paul. Entonces, siendo así, le doy la palabra a Susana Loaiza, que tiene la mano levantada, y pues te invito a que hagas tu pregunta. Necesitamos...
Hola,
Sí,
buenos días a
escuchamos.
todos y a todas. Sí, yo quisiera saber un poquito más cuál ha sido el impacto de estos proyectos en el sector cafetero, pero más desde el punto de vista del ingreso. Entiendo que estos sistemas aumentan la productividad, pero no sé si ustedes tienen mediciones del antes y después de los ingresos de los caficultores que han participado acá.
Yo pienso que Luis Felipe puede empezar a responder esa pregunta y si Ludwig tendría algo que agregar, podría agregarlo después de Luis Felipe.
Por supuesto, Susana. Entonces, básicamente, los incentivos económicos del corto plazo, que son los derivados de la comercialización de los créditos de carbono que estas familias cafeteras generan de la transformación de sus residuos y de convertirlos en biochar, está a día de hoy generando en promedio $380 de ingreso adicional por caficultor en cada una de las intervenciones que hemos tenido. Eso representa un 10% de incremento del ingreso promedio anual de un caficultor en Colombia, lo que conlleva, digamos que, a a ser una fuente adicional y de diversificación de ingresos para ellos, mientras recuperan sus suelos degradados pues, por las prácticas convencionales de la agricultura intensiva en agroquímicos. Los beneficios derivados de esos cambios agronómicos evidentemente son un poco más complejos de monitorear, pero debido a que el proyecto lleva alrededor de 9 meses en operación con aplicaciones constantes de biochar en más de 360 agricultores a la fecha han, digamos que incorporado biochar a sus suelos. La cantidad de testimonios sobre los beneficios en temas de la salud de su cultivo, en temas de producción, etcétera, son realmente satisfactorios y pues ya nos encontramos en procesos de investigación para tener la data pues en una metodología pues científica para encontrar esos proxies.
Muchísimas gracias, Luis.
Vale, no sé si Ludwig te gustaría agregar algo en este sentido o piensas que por ahora no.
Yes, happy to add something. I think in general, coffee cultivations in Colombia offer a huge opportunity for both biochar and also enhanced rock weathering. I would like to add that particularly for enhanced rock weathering, the efficiency of our amendment is highly dependent on this type of soil. So it really depends what type of soil the farmers have, what issues they have with their soils, and then also what type of impact we can drive for the farmer. We do see that for the right types of soils, and these exist all over Colombia, we can help farmers and particularly also coffee farmers save around $300 to $350 per hectare. The way we calculate this is, on the one hand, of course, we replace existing fertilizers with a cheaper option. But then we also are the ones that pay for the application of this rock powder. We are the ones that pay for the measurement of the impact. So there's a lot of other cost factors that Tropicarbon overtakes that the farmer would usually pay. We've seen data of enhanced rock weathering on coffee farms of yield increases of around 15%. Again, this really depends on the soils, but there are yield increases. There is growth acceleration, especially of new seedlings. There is acceleration of new sprouts and the blossoming phase. So there's a lot of positive impacts on the agronomical side for coffee farmers, which both biochar, but also very much enhanced rock weathering can drive for you. If you're interested, please write me an email after the call, and I'd be very happy to provide further information and more details about this.
Muchas gracias, Ludwig. Tenemos espacio para una última pregunta, que de hecho es para ti, Ludwig. Es si hay ventas o algunas, sí, como sales traction, que la pregunta de Gustavo Cárdenas.
Yes, in short, yes. There are many buyers that are interested. We have signed agreements with buyers, which unfortunately at this point I cannot publish yet. This is something that I was talking with IDH before. The reason for that is that many buyers in our space invest into a project before the project has started, and we commit ourselves to return a certain amount of impact, both on the carbon side, but also on the agricultural side. But the project that we have recently closed is with a major offsetter from the United States. The project will start in October. And if you're interested to learn more about this, please also write me an email. And in the next few weeks, I will be announcing on who that buyer is.
Bueno, pues muchísimas gracias. Espero poder haber ofrecido un panorama del tipo de trabajo que hace reVive a través de su hub de alistamiento de inversiones en el sector de uso de la tierra, enfocado principalmente pues, en restauración de tierras y buenas prácticas. Quisiera compartir con ustedes nuestros contactos para las personas interesadas en conversar un poco más sobre el tema. Tenemos un portafolio de compañías que hemos venido acompañando no solamente en este segmento de remoción de créditos de carbono, que es súper interesante, pero en los segmentos de aforestación y agricultura. Entonces, si están interesados de conocer más adelante, pueden contactarnos a estos datos de contacto que estoy proyectando. Y si usted es un inversionista que está interesado en entender cómo invertir en estas empresas, en Tropicarbon, en Biodiversal, pues puede comunicarse también con nosotros. Nosotros hacemos el link. O si quiere ver el resto de nuestro portafolio, pues también estamos súper dispuestos a ver cómo colaboramos. Agradezco a todos los participantes del webinar por haber asistido, muy especialmente pues a Bioflux, a Biodiversal y a Tropicarbon. Y muchísimas, muchísimas gracias nuevamente. Que tengan un buen día.